we just kind of thought about how the spoken word is so impactful. I feel like when I look at a beautiful Instagram feed, I say, oh, that's a beautiful recipe. I don't know if I could make that. But if I hear someone say, like a friend of mine say, hey, I made this recipe from so-and-so's website or this cookbook, I'll say, oh yeah, I want to give that a try. So we felt like if we could connect with people by talking, that it would have kind of a different sticking power than maybe a blog might, especially since the internet is just kind of flooded with images.
That was Sonja and Alex Overhiser, and this is episode 104 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I am your host, and this, of course, is the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Each week, my goal is to share with you thoughts, stories, and interviews, everything related to food blogging so we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today, I'm talking to Sonja and Alex Overhiser. They're with the site and the podcast, A Couple Cooks. So if you don't follow them on Instagram, you should just stop what you're doing and go there and follow them right now. I love their gorgeous food photos. Their photography is just beautiful. I think you'll agree. So we had a nice discussion, Alex and Sonja and I, and Alex said something pretty amazing. Well, there was a lot of amazing things said, but something Alex said really stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it since we talked. He said this, that bloggers are like books. You don't have just one kind of book, right? I mean, think about it. There's all kinds of books that are out there. There's romance, there's nonfiction, thrillers, sci-fi, historical fiction. There's just so much. It just goes on to subgenres even. So you don't have to be like any other blogger out there. You don't have to be like, if everybody is following one particular format and you don't want to follow that format, you don't have to. As Alex was saying, you kind of create your blog around the genre of life that you love and create the audience around it. I mean, I just think there's a lot to be said about that, because I think sometimes we do try to put ourselves in a box to be just like everybody else. Maybe if you could pick a genre that might help you at least, because it's good to have some boundaries that you can kind of play around in. Sometimes having things too open can be a problem as well. So maybe pick a genre that works for you and then just go with that for a little while. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you the rest of the discussion today because, I don't know, it's a very good discussion. We also talk particularly about a podcast. So I know some of you have been interested in creating a podcast that goes along with your food blog. And so that's what Sonja and Alex and I are talking about. Because as they point out in this discussion, having a podcast that corresponds with your food blog can be like another way, an extension of yourself to help your bloggers get to know you on a different level. And obviously you are using your voice. And so people get a chance to get to know you on a different level rather than just reading the things that you're saying on the page. So I think it's a great concept. I think if you are curious about how this would work, you should follow Alex and Sonja's food podcast. It's called A Couple Cooks Podcast. That works out really well, don't you think? I like it when things work like that. So anyway, if you're not thinking about starting a podcast, don't feel discouraged that today's discussion is not for you. I promise you there is a lot of good information in here. The thing I really like about what Sonja and Alex had to say is that they really spent some time understanding what their mission and their goals were with their blog. And I love that because I feel like it causes them to, operate under a certain sense of transparency and also integrity, because when a brand comes along, they know if that brand is a good fit for the work that they're trying to do. And so, I love that. I also think it probably creates a very good sense of clarity about the work that they're doing. I think it just comes across in their voices and the way that they talk about their sites. So I think you'll find some interesting things in there, whether or not you're interested in actually having a podcast or not. So I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy listening. So I know there's a lot going on right now with the holidays and so many other events, some very troubling that are going on right now. I just want to say Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Chopped podcast. It really means a lot. And I really sincerely hope that today's episode brings a diversion from all that, a welcome diversion, maybe a smile even, and maybe even a new tip here or there for being your best and a renewed sense of passion for the work that you're doing each and every day. Okay, without further ado, let's get straight to the feature interview. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Sonja and Alex Overhiser. They're with the site A Couple Cooks and also with the podcast A Couple Cooks as well. So, hey Sonja and Alex, welcome to the Chopped podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hi, we're glad to be here.
So glad to have you. I'm really looking forward to talking with you. I follow you. I think I first learned about you both on Instagram, and I love your Instagram feed. It's just gorgeous.
Well, we're big fans of the show, so the admiration is mutual.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I know that we're going to, talk about a lot of great things about food blogging, but, I always like to start with, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how it is that you started your food blog.
Sure. Well, it all started back in 2000 when we met in college.
Wow.
And yeah, we're that old. So we met freshman year of college and dated all through college and then got married out of school, and we didn't know anything about cooking. So Alex knew the most of the two of us. He knew how to boil water and make pasta. And I was completely cooking illiterate. I did frozen food and fast food. And that's about it. And so when we got married, we bought a house and we wanted to have friends over and realized that we knew pretty much nothing about how to cook.
And that started the blog?
Well, so from that point, we started having people over for dinner and using a few of those cookbooks that we got from our wedding and really just fell in love. We just kind of threw ourselves in full throttle. And at the same time, digital photography was kind of coming along in its age. And so I was getting really into photography. And so food just happened to be a fun thing to take pictures of. And somehow after a couple of years of that, the blog kind of grew out of that.
We had a personal blog at the time, and we realized that our personal blog was becoming just pictures of food one after another. And so we decided, hey, maybe we should start something that's just food. And so we started our blog in 2010.
I love stories like this because I love hearing how passions are born. I don't think it doesn't sound like you went into this marriage with the expectation that you would have this passion for cooking because both of you sound like minimalist when it comes to cooking. And here you are. So, that's a really awesome story.
Absolutely. My mother is still very surprised of what we're doing today. She was just horrified and thought that I would never survive on my own after college because I just did not know anything about cooking and didn't care at all.
And not only did you survive, but just looking at the recipes that you have on your site, they're gorgeous. They look like really great recipes. You know what I mean? Not something for a beginner even.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we try to keep things pretty accessible because we started out and didn't know anything. We're not lifelong cooks. So we try to keep things pretty approachable, but we also try to have a creative spin on them. So always introducing new ingredients and good flavors. And we just have a big passion for eating things that taste good and also are good for your body. So kind of melding all of those things together of delicious, but also not too difficult to make.
Well, I think you two would be the best people to learn from because I have this theory. Okay, so it's like a math teacher who just naturally gets math and has always been naturally good at math. For them to explain things to the rest of the world is maybe a little bit more difficult than somebody who has had to work at it. So I kind of feel like that the same could be true for cooking, right? You all have learned it at in college and just constantly grew those skills. And so you probably have a lot of, very relatable recipes on your site.
Absolutely. Yeah. We try to really help people learn through the recipes that we post. And yeah, we started from nothing. So we can really make no kind of assumptions about what people might no, we really try to take it from the ground up.
So Alex, tell me about the photography. I mean, did you go into it with, you already had a passion for photography, or did you kind of grow it as you were going along?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a passion for photography since high school. I had my own darkroom set up back in the day on film. And so I'm trying to remember, somewhere after we got married, I got a digital SLR and kind of just fell in love with it all again. So it really was an excuse of, if we're taking pictures every week on the blog, I could constantly practice and get better. And so we've grown a ton. I'm still a little bit embarrassed to see our pictures from 6 years ago. Food styling and photography skills have both grown a lot through just the process of practice.
When you were shooting in high school, was it like mostly outdoor landscapey kind of things, or?
I feel like we had really great art teachers in my high school where we had pretty much unlimited film, and they just pushed us in a lot of different genres. So never food, but lots of everything from sports to landscapes to portraits. So
did food present any particular challenges for you?
Food is like the most difficult subject, aside from the fact that it doesn't move.
Yeah, I agree.
You see it with your eyes, and it's really hard to get that portrayed on film. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
taken a lot of practice to be able to vision something beforehand. At the beginning, it was just very much trial and error. You take 200 pictures and maybe like one.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Then you'll have to edit all those 200 pictures, or pick which ones you want to use. So do you do the styling too, or is that something that Sonja does?
We do it together.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually just one of us will kind of take control of a shoot, because having too many cooks in the kitchen can be difficult.
I asked that because my husband and I shoot together too. We didn't start out that way. I was, he's a photographer, but he has a background with that, but mostly landscape. And so he was teaching me the settings on the camera and all that stuff, and I was learning. And it just seemed like it worked really well for us to work together on it. And not to say that every day is perfect that we do it, but it's kind of a fun project to do together that way.
Yeah, that's so fun. I didn't realize you two shot together too.
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah. I do most of the styling, and then, he's really good at the very technical side of the camera, and, and then we also, I feel like it's like when you're working together with somebody, you have to have a vision, right? It seems to me at least that way. So I'll try to find inspirational pictures, and I think, this is the kind of mood I like for a picture, and I think that kind of helps us find a middle ground.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult. I mean, like Alex was alluding to, if you both have different visions about what the shoot is supposed to be.
Yes.
We definitely butt heads when we're shooting, for sure.
Yeah. And do you use those same shots for Instagram? This is just me being curious, because I'm always struggling with, like, do I use the same shots that I put on my site, or do you actually do separate shots with your phone, or how do you do that?
We take separate shots now. And Alex, do you want to talk about our new little baby that we use?
Yeah, I have a new
to
best
take
friend. So we have a big Canon SLR that we use for the blog photos, but I just got a mirrorless Sony camera. It's still a detachable lens camera, but you can just tap your phone to it and it'll transfer the picture to your phone. So I'm like in love. I've been playing with it all the time. It's a little bit smaller, and
it's very light, so it's great for when you're traveling, or maybe...
We just went for a walk, and I just took it along. It's just so fun to have a small camera. It's kind of funny. I love cameras. I love tech gear of all sorts, so I love the gadgets, but there's something fun about having something small and light that you just want to take with you.
Yeah, so I imagine it's a better lens than what you have on your phone. Is that right?
Yeah, it still has all the manual controls and everything that an SLR would have, but... Yeah, so it's kind of the best of both worlds.
That's very cool.
The picture quality is just beautiful, too. So, yeah, we've been blown away by our new gadget.
So we have a new Instagram camera is the moral of that story.
And did you say that you can actually send from the camera to your phone, so it's not all those extra steps?
Exactly. Yeah, you just actually tap your phone on it and it transfers. It's like magic.
I just have to ask, I mean, obviously you may not need very many edits, but do you just use edits that are provided on Instagram, or do you use some other filter to, edit your photos?
Yeah, so I have a process of, usually I'll start in the app Snapseed. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's similar to like Lightroom on the computer, where it's just straight editing. So I usually do a little bit of brightness or color correction there. Yeah. And then I often will transfer to the Visco app and apply a light filter, and then transfer to Instagram and edit one last time. So I tend to edit in 3 different apps, which is a bit excessive.
But he does all that in about 1 minute. He's really fast. So you're like, wow, how did you do that?
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, like I say, your Instagram feed is just like inspirational because, I mean, I think we're probably in the same boat. We follow a lot of people and there's a lot of food involved in all these shots. And I feel like yours, it's like I can immediately know, oh, that's a couple cooks. And I think that's kind of cool to have that distinctive look.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you to say. Yeah, we've been having fun with Instagram and the new Instagram stories feature. It's fun to kind of show the behind the scenes, the very dirty kitchen behind all the food.
I know. Sean calls it the Marley Hurricane when because, I like to get like 3 or 4 recipes going at the same time to shoot. And yeah, the kitchen's just a disaster after that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So I really was intrigued to talk with you both about the fact that you have a podcast, because I think it's something that some food bloggers I know are interested in. And I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about what inspired you to start a podcast.
Sure. We were looking to kind of do something a little bit new. And the reason that we are a couple cooks and we keep doing a couple cooks is because we're so passionate about food and just what it can do for your body, for your emotional health, for your relationships, for the world, when you eat mindfully, and just how delicious it can be and how it's really changed our lives for the better. And so we just have a passion for that. And for, since we started from the ground up, not knowing anything and kind of learning along the way, we just love sharing that passion with others. And so we felt like a podcast would be an interesting way to share recipes and share the things that we've learned that have helped us kind of orient our life around food. And we just kind of thought about how the spoken word is so impactful. I feel like when I look at a beautiful Instagram feed, I say, oh, that's a beautiful recipe. I don't know if I could make that. But if I hear someone say, like a friend of mine say, hey, I made this recipe from so-and-so's website or this cookbook, I'll say, oh yeah, I want to give that a try. So we felt like if we could connect with people by talking, that it would have kind of a different sticking power than maybe a blog might, especially since the internet is just kind of flooded with images.
Yes. And do you feel like that's happened as a result of starting your podcast?
Yeah, it's what we really love about it is that there's this high engagement level. Yeah. It's sometimes hard to measure, but you talk to somebody who you didn't even know was listening to it, and they were literally cooking every single thing they heard on the podcast, or something really stuck with them, and they said, oh, I've been chewing on that all week. Maybe I should stop eating processed food. And I don't know. It's just really cool. I feel like you could write an entire book about it that they would never read, but you can share in 15 minutes, kind of a more, a story that really changes the way people think about something.
So that's great. So, I mean, I have listened to your podcast, but I'd like for you to explain it for everybody else. Do you actually have a format, and as part of that format that you actually talk about the recipes that may be, on your site?
We do. Yeah. We have a shorter podcast. So we try to keep it around 20 to 30 minutes. And we usually have a segment about recipes. So we'll share 1 or 2 recipes that go with kind of the theme of the day's podcast. And then we do generally have a guest. Sometimes it's a featured guest who might be a chef or a cookbook author or a blogger, some other inspirational person. And then sometimes we do just call a friend, another blogger, to get their advice on something we might be talking about. So we like to have at least 1 guest per podcast, but sometimes it's just Alex and I, and we talk about food. So I think that's about all that's in our format.
And it took us a while. It probably took us 10 episodes to kind of really calm down and figure out what we were trying to do as far as format and what we wanted to try to say every episode.
Well, that's kind of cool that you started with it not knowing exactly where you were headed. And I think sometimes that's a good example to follow.
Yeah, I mean, you should have heard our first episode. We recorded it like 10 times and it was terrible. It just took us forever to be able to speak clearly and articulate what we wanted to say. And It's been a huge learning curve.
So if you look up episode 1 on our podcast, it's actually episode 2.
Yeah.
episode 1
was
got
just
thrown away.
terrible.
Was it the recording part that was hard, or just like figuring out what to say?
Figuring out what to say, how to have 2 different people that you're kind of trying to go back and forth to know when to pause, and because we're not really doing an interview format, so we had to learn how to record together, which was challenging.
Do you use a script, or how do you figure out the questions you're going to ask your guest?
We take a few notes and we discuss it, the 2 of us, beforehand. But usually we just go from some pretty rough notes. We don't really script things out anymore. We started out scripting a little bit more than we do now. But yeah, we just like to have kind of an outline of what we want to talk about.
So as a fellow podcaster, I'm actually curious what your thoughts are on that. Like, does that feel like a better connect with your audience? Or, like I mean, I've heard some people talk about podcasts, how you need to have that podcast voice. And, I always feel like I would rather be a little bit more real than that. But I also see the, advantage of having this energetic voice that people can, feel a sense of positivity about.
I think for me, a lot of it's just time. It's very time consuming to learn how to do a podcast. And so we have found that not being scripted, I would love it to sound like Radiolab, but I feel like that takes multiple people a full-time job. And so we don't quite have the energy and resources to put that into.
Yeah. So, and we do find that the more organic the conversation, the better it turns out, for sure. Mm-hmm. When we record just the 2 of us, usually it's the first take that's the best. If we do it,
I don't know if I agree.
Okay, Alex doesn't agree with me.
Don't fight, you guys.
Sometimes that's true, but we've actually found that occasionally you record an interview and you're like, I loved everything we said, but I feel like we could do that in 5 minutes. And so we'll ask the guest if we can just redo the entire interview, and somehow getting it out once, the second time everything flows a little bit better. But
we've only done that a couple times.
But it's not so much like a script. It's more just, now we have a concept of what we want to talk about. And maybe we even ask different questions, but it kind of gets the tension out of the voice.
It's funny that you say that. I've had that happen. I think there was like a recording glitch and I had to re-record a couple of interviews. And you're right. The second time through is usually better.
Yeah, I agree. And it's been so fun. Just the different people we've been able to talk to and the topics we've been able to explore. There's something, I'm not sure if you agree, but there's something just a little more, I don't know, magical about talking about something versus writing a long post about this and that. It's really neat to be able to connect with people in real life.
I agree. And another thing I like about it too is it forces me to have a voice on it. Like I may have these thoughts in my head, but then somehow when I get them out, I don't know. I usually enjoy that process of going, oh, I didn't realize that's how I felt about that.
Yeah, you do a great job. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sometimes you just have to talk it out.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny that you say that because I am an extrovert. And as an extrovert, I do think that it's really important for me to get the words out there because it's like finishing the formulation of the thought by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been interesting. I'm a little more extroverted and Alex is a little more introverted. So I was actually very surprised that he agreed to do a podcast with me.
Yeah. It actually leads me to another question, because you're doing the podcast together and the blog together. I mean, and your site is called A Couple Cooks. So do you all cook together?
We do. Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty much every recipe, I would say, we cook together and develop together. Sometimes one person or the other will be the lead.
Right.
So they'll say, hey, here's the idea. What do you think of this? And the other person will give the critical feedback. But yeah, we develop everything together. We cook it together and it's given us so much joy and just been such a fun way to connect and be creative in our marriage.
I love that. And you also mentioned earlier something about eating mindfully. I'm curious what that means for you as far, this is obviously more personal than it is about your blog, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So mindful eating is something we learned about when we were first starting to eat differently. And it's kind of being mindful about the choices that you make in terms of what you're eating. And then when you're actually eating, just trying to be mentally present. I used to do a lot of just kind of snacking and eating at my computer, and I still do a little bit of that, full disclosure, but just trying to really be intentional, I guess, in the way that we eat, the people that we eat it with, the places or just the type of food that we buy. We try to just cook with whole foods and cook from scratch. And so that's kind of our whole philosophy, is just being really intentional about what we eat.
I think I've been on that journey myself because I don't even know if I knew what the concept of mindful eating was, but learning to pay attention to what you're putting in your mouth is usually it's usually a good thing, I think.
Totally. Yeah, we've done some speaking engagements where we do a little mindful eating exercise with people and have them take a raisin, and we have this little thing we go through. Have you done that before?
I'm a part of a meditation app. I think it's called 10% Happier, and they actually have a video.
Oh, cool.
Have you heard about that one?
I think so.
Yeah, they do a video where they talk about that exercise. It's kind of cool.
Okay.
So go ahead and explain it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no. You take the raisin and you kind of look at it and smell it, and then when you eat it, you kind of think about how it tastes, and when you're chewing it, you think about how that feels. And I don't remember exactly everything we go through with people, but then we kind of debrief afterwards, and people have really interesting thoughts about the experience of just eating one raisin.
That's like kind of torture to eat just one, because it seems like if I eat a raisin, it's usually like a handful of them. So just that alone is a self-discipline, I think.
Totally. Yeah. We should do it with chocolate, actually, too. I think that would be even better.
It's probably not a bad idea to do with everything. I actually had a friend once who told me with herbs, like, to really understand how an herb tastes, it's really good if you just eat it raw, or, plain, and just try, that helps you understand how it's going to impact the dish.
Totally. Alex does that all the time.
Yeah.
Does he really? We have a little herb garden outside of our door, and he's always chewing random herbs.
So what herbs do you grow?
We grow pretty much all of them, but rosemary, thyme, oregano, chives, basil, lemon thyme.
Nice.
Lavender.
Lavender might be my favorite weird thing to chew on.
Really?
That's weird. That's weird.
Every time we go for a walk, I'll chew on some lavender.
Does it not have like a soapy taste to it?
It does a little bit, but it's just pleasant.
Oh.
You might be the only person who thinks that, Alex.
Yeah. Not recommended for everybody. No, I know
exactly.
Like at Indian restaurants, they have fennel seeds, I think it is, for your people to chew on afterwards, which has kind of a licorice taste to it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So maybe you need to grow some fennel. That might make that better.
There we go.
So when you were starting your podcast, I'm just curious, like, what was the most challenging part for you?
I think just the technical side of figuring out what microphone should I buy, what software should I use, the time consumption of actually sitting down and trying to editing a podcast. We were having fun recording, but it was just a lot of pressure to try to figure out all that. And I felt like a lot of the information on the internet felt like it was from 2008 and not necessarily with modern tools. So that wasn't very helpful.
Right. Because stuff changes so quickly.
I think for me too, interviewing skills. I mean, I actually went to journalism school, but I did mainly print journalism. So recording an interview was pretty hard at first. And you start to pick up on just different interviewing techniques and start to listen more critically when you're listening to people, other podcasts or TV, just to hear kind of how people phrase questions and how people transition. And that was really difficult for me at first.
It's funny. I'm in a book reading club, and the last book we read is by Judd Apatow, the comedian, and his book is actually like all these interviews he did with a bunch of comedians starting at a very young age, by the way. Have you heard this about him?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy. Like, he was interviewing Jerry Seinfeld when he was like in high school, because he would just reach out and tell him he was with some radio station or something. It's a really great story. But I think most people in my book reading club didn't actually like the book, but I really found it intriguing because I just found the way he asked the questions, and I found myself looking at the perspective that he had in asking certain questions of people. So
it truly is an art form.
It is.
I think it's easy to look at reporters and on TV and say, oh, that's so easy. They're scripted. But It is just, it's very challenging.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have a favorite interviewer?
I'm thinking,
like I'm thinking of Fresh Air. What is her name? Terry Gross.
oh yeah, Terry Gross. She's amazing.
Yes.
I do love Terry Gross.
And I also feel like Stephen Colbert, he is just, I mean, he is like, right in time moving with the discussion. It's really cool the way he interviews people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think as a viewer, you think, oh, that was probably planned or scripted or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that so much of it is just organic in the moment. And you have to be a certain type of personality and have a pretty quick wit to be able to do that. So I have the ultimate admiration for people who can do that.
So do you publish your podcast on a regular basis? Like, is it like every Tuesday or something like that?
Yeah, so we started out trying to do weekly and realizing it just wasn't sustainable. So now we do every other week on Tuesday nights is when it publishes. So it gives us time to really be thoughtful about what our schedule is going to be and not try to just create content too quickly.
I like that.
And we have found that, kind of as you alluded to earlier, Marley, that just saying you have a podcast can help lots of different conversations to happen that never would have in the first place. We were lucky early on in our podcast. Mario Batali was in town, and we just got connected to him through a PR agency. And so I think it was our maybe third or fourth episode was with Mario Batali. It was very quick, and it was just kind of a press room interview, really, really fast. But that led to an interview with Graham Elliott, and we had Carla Hall on the podcast. We had Rick Bayless on the podcast. So it's just been really cool to see that saying you have a podcast can really be kind of get your foot in the door to talk to some really inspirational people.
That is a great story. And I have found the same to be true. Like I feel like just, I reach out to, if I feel inspired by somebody's story, I reach out to them, even if I feel like there's no way. To me, even getting a rejection feels really cool. Like, I reached out to Gloria Steinem and I got a rejection from her assistant. I was like, yes.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah. We have found that it never hurts to ask.
Right.
And so we always say that. My mom always said that, actually. So yeah, it never hurts to ask, and you never know what's going to happen. And people have been so generous with their time with us. It's been really amazing, and we feel really blessed by all the people who have said yes.
So it seems like there's it can be a win-win situation having a podcast like that, because the win is your ability to connect with people outside of your typical circle, the people that you're interviewing. And then the other win would be the audience gets a chance to hear your voice and maybe strengthen the connection there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge challenge. Like Alex said, that the technology part is a huge challenge. And then just being able to create content and put yourself out there. It's really scary. It's really vulnerable. But there are a lot of really wonderful things about it as well.
I love it. Okay. So back to both the blog and the podcast. I mean, I know that you mentioned that you both are working full time. Is it a goal of yours that eventually, you'll turn this into your job, or is this something that you feel passionate about as a, like a professional level hobby?
That's something that's kind of transitioned over time. We actually started with a mission statement that was like, we're just going to have a blog purely for fun and passion, and then realized that there was this business opportunity to it. And so we've been trying to just grow it really sustainably and with intention that we're going to match our brand. We're going to work with sponsors that match our brand. And yeah, if that was able to grow to a point where we could put somebody on it full time or part time, that would be awesome. But it's not necessarily the goal as much as we're trying to just sustainably grow that.
Okay, so I really resonate with that right now, just because I think there's a lot of people who put a lot of pressure on themselves to monetize their blog. And I think like this very mindful approach to that is so smart. I think it maybe helps you stay as a blogger with more integrity.
Yeah, it allows us to really enjoy the work that we're doing, and we're still having full creative control, and you're not just trying to please a sponsor or try to do something that's popular on Pinterest. Instead, we're doing what we enjoy. And there's been ebbs and flows in our traffic over time, and I feel like if we were too attached to a single idea, it might have been more soul crushing. So instead, we've been allowed to just have freedom and not try to milk money out of it.
Oh, that's so good. And that way you also can stay more true to your own voice, right? Like, I mean, in other words, you're not writing in a way to only get the SEO and only get the traffic, or, you're not, I have to do a chocolate chip cookie recipe because that's what everybody else is doing, or I've got to do pumpkin right now, or you're just kind of following what your goal is as far as the recipes that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that has helped keep it sustainable for sure.
I hope that resonates with people out there. I mean, I certainly feel it because sometimes I feel this tug of like pressuring myself to do certain things. I've got to post this many times a week, or I got to do this or that. And if I just take a step back and just say, okay, like you were mentioning, Alex, about having a mission statement and staying with that, I think as long as you're true to yourself and true to that, I think you're probably pretty successful, and you get to define what success means for yourself that way.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, of just defining, was this what I was trying to do? Was I trying to create a beautiful recipe, or was I trying to make money off of this recipe? And they could both be valid as long as that goes into the intention that what you were trying to do with that project.
Right.
We actually had this recipe really early on our blog that was a grilled cheese that just kind of blew up on Pinterest, and we were getting all this traffic from it. And we're like, maybe we should just do all grilled cheese and all fatty, buttery, crispy things. And it was kind of funny because I think we did another take on it that just didn't blow up at all. And we're like, oh, it wasn't so much about the fact that you had to have a very specific thing that will be popular. We just happened to do something that worked, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a model. So
I'm so glad that you said that, because it does feel like, I mean, I think we're all in this boat at some point in time. We're just like looking for the pill, the magic formula, like, oh, it's grilled cheese. So if I do grilled cheese, that one did really well, so the next one will do really well. But there, even when you do that, it's not always a prediction of how successful it's going to be.
For sure. You can never guess what Google is going to think is popular.
Yeah, actually, one of our big popular recipes from Google is kohlrabi fritters.
Really?
So random. Like, why would we be a top hit for kohlrabi? But we are. So that was not our intention.
Honestly, I think a lot of people would have a hard time even identifying kohlrabi in the grocery store. How cool is it that it's a very popular recipe for you? That's cool.
I think it's probably like one of the 2 recipes with kohlrabi on the internet.
Maybe maybe that's what it is. Everybody's going to go out there now and do a kohlrabi recipe.
Yeah, right. An untapped market.
Is that the advice then that you would give to somebody? I like to kind of ask this question sometimes. Like if you were talking to somebody who's new, or they're getting ready to start their food blog, I mean, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, I think there's different valid reasons, but I really think you don't necessarily have to have a mission statement, but knowing what your intention is going in. Is this a art project where I'm not going to worry about traffic? Is this something that we'd like to grow as a business, and trying to be really intentional about that? And if you want to change it, there's no reason you can't change your mission statement. It just is being intentional along the way.
Right. I think our mission statement kind of changed a couple years ago when we realized we could grow it into a business. But we kind of reevaluate every year and make sure that we're kind of holding up our values and mission. And that's been really helpful to have as a guiding principle. And
it's been really nice to have 2 of us. Yes. We are a couple cooks, so we can hold each other accountable if, I'm feeling like my pictures don't work, or Sonja's feeling like a recipe is unoriginal, then we can kind of be a voice of reason for the other when we get lost in our own heads. So I would say find friends who are also doing it, and somebody who can hold you accountable for why you're doing this in the first place.
Of course, that requires honesty too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say that I feel like the reason that we're still here today doing what we're doing is because of community. The food blogger community has just been so amazing and embracing and generous and kind. And there have been so many kind of informal mentorships that have happened with us, and people who have just cheered us on along the way. And I mean, it's, as everyone who's listening knows, it's so hard to be a food blogger. There's so many different pressures, and you can get in your head so easily. And just the beautiful community that has formed around the world has been so inspiring for us. And that's kind of why we're still chugging, is because of everyone's affirmation and encouragement and positivity.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. And I love that the community of food blogging as well. And what are the ways that you would suggest people get connected? Is it like Facebook groups or going to conferences? What do you think is the best way to do that?
There are a lot of different ways. I think what we did and when we started out was just kind of finding people that we admired and then emailing them and saying, wow, I love your work. And at that point, when they would respond with a kind and gracious email, it would be like, what? You took time to respond to me, lowly me. So that was kind of how we started some of the relationships that we have today.
And I think finding people who are in the same boat as you, like maybe Smitten Kitchen, and you don't have too much in common. If you just started your blog, not that you should email her and tell her you love her, but finding some other people who are maybe new at it and you can kind of share technical tips or share photo tips and that sort of thing, I think is really the people who we met early on have become some of our best friends.
That's really good. And I also, want to go back to the point that you were talking about where you can be honest with each other and then finding people, if you're not in this with your spouse and you can find somebody, I do think if you can find some ways to be honest and vulnerable, it does feel kind of scary because, you may have to make this confession that you don't have 300,000 page views a month or whatever. But if you can find people that you can talk to about these kinds of things, I do think it helps. You might realize that they're not getting that either. And so you can find some ways to, kind of help inspire each other.
Absolutely. And one thing that we talk about all the time with each other is a blog really is like, I like to replace the word book for blog. And there's so many different types of books and so many different types of successful books. Stephen King isn't really competing with, I don't know, the biography of Abraham Lincoln, but they can both be really popular. Yeah. Or you could have something that's really well regarded and win a prize that nobody reads. So I feel like that's where going back to the intention of why am I doing this? And if you just want to make money, then maybe you should write romance novels or not necessarily have an artistic bent to it. So there's just all these different ways that you can approach blogging, and none of them are necessarily wrong.
That's so good. And in fact, I just listened to an interview that was had Seth Godin in it, and do you know who he is, the marketing guy?
Yeah.
So he actually said, whatever you do, leave a path behind you that you're proud of. And I love that because I do think it's so easy in blogging in particular that I can start to find myself following other people like, oh, they're doing this, so I got to do that. And I think if I change that lens and say, you know what, this is about, me leaving something that I'm proud of behind me, then it feels, I feel more inspired about it. Let me say it that way.
Absolutely. And that's where not having the pressure of it being our full-time job has been really nice because we don't have that I have to pay my mortgage and make decisions for that reason.
Right. Okay. So I love to ask these fun questions at the end of the interview. So I hope you guys are game for that.
Totally.
Okay. So
what you got?
Let's start with you, Sonja. What is one food item you can't live without?
Oh boy. So many. I am going to say garlic.
Garlic. Wow. That's a good one. So what?
Yeah, we put it in everything.
Like, what's your favorite thing to put it on then? Pasta?
Yeah, maybe pizza. We're big into artisanal pizza. And so a really good pizza margarita with some good garlic on there is where it's at for me.
Do you like slice it or do you do the whole thing roasted or how do you do that?
Just mince it.
Okay.
Put it right on the tomatoes.
Yep.
We like to use really high quality like San Marzano tomatoes. Yes. Put those on and then just throw the garlic on it. So good.
You're making me hungry. So, okay. What about you, Alex?
Oh, same question?
Yeah, same question.
Uh-oh.
You don't have a favorite food?
I'm thinking. I always get in trouble, so he never likes my obscure answers to this question.
So are you asking like food ingredient or are you asking like dish?
I always say food item, but if you have if it's a dish, that's fine too.
Can I enter another dish?
Please.
I already kind of said pizza, but yeah. So I love paella. We've talked about this on the podcast before, but paella. I studied abroad in Madrid.
Yeah.
And and paella is this really wonderful rice dish with saffron and aromatic spices, and then sometimes it has seafood and sometimes it has meat and sometimes it has veggies, and that's just a really fun like celebration dish for me. So anytime there's paella, it makes me very happy. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. I studied abroad in Argentina, and
oh, cool.
And everything was pumpkin there. I mean, I just could not believe how much pumpkin it was. Of course, maybe it was the time of year we were there too, but yeah, I was very inspired by that. Okay, Alex, you're on the hot seat now. What's going on with you?
I'm going to say a fresh peach. I really like fruit in the summer. So when it's in season and it's a short season, nothing's better than that.
And just eating it raw, or do you what do you do with it?
Nope, just raw. I'm pretty boring when it comes to fruit and vegetables.
You mean you're minimalist? Minimalist sounds better.
Where do you get them at? Do you for example, I used to have a peach tree in my backyard. They're pretty easy to grow, but just curious where you get yours at.
Usually I send Sonja to the farmer's market because as an introvert, I find it a bit overwhelming, but she'll pick them up at the farmer's market for me.
That's the best place to get them. Yeah. Okay. So you two, what's your favorite app on your phone? And we'll start with you, Alex.
I will go with Snapseed. So that photo editor, I could just play with it all day. Like it's a game.
Really? It's that much fun, huh?
Yeah. I really like playing with photos. So
is it free?
It's great. It is.
Cool.
And it's available for both Android and iPhones.
Nice. Wonderful. Okay. What about you, Sonja?
Well, I was going to say Instagram, but I'm going to try to be a little more creative.
Okay.
And I am going to say Voxer. Do you know that app?
No.
So it is a chat and voice messaging app. So it's a little bit like WhatsApp, if you know WhatsApp. Okay. Yeah. So I use it to keep in touch with friends who are across the country or sometimes across the world. And it's so fun to leave each other voice messages. So I have friends who will leave each other like 10-minute voice messages. And there's something unique about just kind of sharing all your thoughts that are at the top of your mind without having a conversation where you might get off track or go to other subjects. You just kind of like ramble and say, here's what's going on with me. And you can also do multiple chats. So I have one with some high school friends with like 4 or 5 girls. And it's such a neat and intimate thing to get this voice message just for you from someone.
Oh, I love it.
It's like micro podcasting.
Yeah, right.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this last question is for both of you combined. Do you have time for TV? And if you do, what's your favorite show?
Ooh, love it. Is Netflix TV?
Yep, for sure.
Then yes.
You have time for it, huh? What's your favorite Netflix show?
Yes. Can I say the show I want to say, Alex?
Sure.
So we just went through all the seasons of Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
We had never watched before, and Alex watched it with me, and we fell in love with it.
Isn't it a great show?
Yeah, so great. We really love the relationships, and it just such a neat show. But then we also started watching Stranger Things 2 days ago. Wait, right? 2 days ago, and we're almost done. So we are loving Stranger Things right now.
It is so addictive. In fact, now I walk around and I want to say mouth breather about people. It's like the best, I don't know, like dig that they don't even know you're digging them about. It's like kind of cool.
Yes, love it. Yeah, we get really into shows. We have kind of addictive personalities, maybe, to a good story. So we love anything with a good story.
Well, something new that's on Netflix right now. It's called I think it's either the or a Black Mirror. Black Mirror, maybe. Have you heard about that?
I keep hearing about it, but I haven't watched it yet.
What's it about?
It's a little bit like each episode is different. And I think there's like 2 seasons on Netflix right now, and so each show is different story, different plot, different actors, everything. And it kind of reminds me of the Twilight Zone a little bit. Like there's these weird things that happened in each story, and I don't know, it's kind of crazy, but we enjoy watching it.
Fun. We'll put that on our list.
Yeah, you might like it. Okay, so how can people find you online?
We are at A Couple Cooks everywhere. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. I don't do much on Pinterest, but mainly Instagram is probably where we're most active.
Yeah.
And then our podcast is A Couple Cooks Podcast. You can search for it in iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And then we have a website page for our podcast. It's acouplecookspodcast.com.
Wonderful.
Oh, and then acouplecooks.com is our website.
Oh, right. Exactly. So Sonja and Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I had a wonderful time.
It's been a pleasure, Marley. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thanks so much to Alex and Sonja Overhiser for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to go to choppedpodcast.com to learn more about today's show. Thanks to everyone for your reviews of the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and social media as well. All your comments and feedback and email, it really all means a lot. So thank you very much. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.